And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour, hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
So I'm going to say this. I felt like I was not going to cry. So the film did it, but here's the thing. When we know our why, our what has more impact. We have options on our what, and it has impact because we are moving in and toward our purpose. So NWP, welcome to the 2017 Plenary. Welcome teacher consultants and directors, welcome members of the Writers' Council, welcome friends and funders and board members, welcome everybody. We know that you have come here with a lot of what questions. You wonder, what does our news mean for you and your site? In your kindness, you have been attentive to us in your national office and you have asked us what it means for us. And we will talk about all of that. We will get back to that. But we're going to start with our why. We're going to explore our why. And in fact, we're going to do that through a very traditional plenary. The plenary we might have been doing, whether we had our September news or not. So I invite you, as we start, to be thinking about what our common work tells us about our why, and then how our what's in the future can respond to that. Now, in our typical plenary, it always starts with the local site. So let me welcome, and please welcome, Nancy Singer from the local Gateway Writing Project to give us greetings.
Wow, what a pleasure it is to have all of you in St. Louis. Welcome, you are our guests, and we are so pleased that you're here with us today. We're also pleased to be celebrating something else today, which is a launch of our 40th anniversary as a writing project site, 1978, and that's quite an accomplishment. So while you're in St. Louis, we hope that you will take advantage of our many cultural, historical, and arts venues that our city has. St. Louis might conjure up many images for you, and we're well aware of that as well. You might think about the 1904 World's Fair. You might think of Meet Me in St. Louis, the kind of popular musical. And if you do think of that, we hope that you'll go to Forest Park, which was the site of that 1904 World's Fair, and see what Forest Park has to offer. There you'll find our free St. Louis Art Museum, which is quite good, a bug, a grasshopper, and a painting recently found. You may find the St. Louis History, or the Missouri History Museum, that has a fabulous civil rights museum exhibit right now that you might enjoy, and it is also free. And you, of course, would want to go to our zoo, which is world famous as well. You also may know St. Louis by its moniker as the Gateway to the West. The Gateway Arch celebrates that westward expansion in our nation's history. And if you decide to go, you kind of have to be okay with a tram that goes about like this. Anybody been to the Arch already? Okay. So it's kind of fun from the top. You can see west, the city to the west, and the mighty Mississippi River to the east. So we hope that you'll enjoy that too. Or if you want to have a different kind of time, maybe you'll want to venture out to University City, where you could go to Chuck Berry's Blueberry Hill and see some rock and roll, eat some great burgers, and drink some cold beer. When you're there, we check out the St. Louis Walk of Fame, where you'll find lots of famous St. Louisans or folks with ties to St. Louis, including T.S. Eliot, Kate Chopin, Tennessee Williams, Maya Angelou, Ike and Tina Turner, Cedric the Entertainer, Nellie, and Jackie Joyner Kersey, just to name a few of the folks that call St. Louis home. But you may know St. Louis for some other reasons too. You may know about the Dred Scott case in 1857 that allowed owners to take their slaves into Western territories. And you may know about the events of August 9th, 2014, when Michael Brown was fatally shot in Ferguson, Missouri. We hope you'll join us for one of two writing marathons tomorrow. One that's a walking tour of downtown St. Louis that includes the old courthouse where the Dred Scott case was tried, or on a short bus ride and walk to a short bus ride and then a walk in Ferguson, Missouri. And when you go to those marathons or explore our city, we hope that you'll see that it's a city like your own, and that those events that happened in our city's history could have easily happened in yours as well. Your presence here and your willingness to have courageous conversations about those things, to envision solutions, to act to heighten civic engagement, and to improve literacy for all children, it cements us, it inspires us, and it empowers us as an organization. And of course, while you're here, we hope you'll help us celebrate that 40th birthday celebration. You may have noticed our booth right outside near NWP Central. If you'll pause for a photograph at our photo booth and tweet us out, we'll give you a cupcake, which is a St. Louis delight as well. We're very proud of this longstanding tradition with NWP as our professional home, and we're proud to have you here as well. And while you're tweeting our hashtag as well, thank Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, who is also a St. Louis native. Welcome to St. Louis. We're very pleased you're here.
You want those cupcakes, I know. Okay, we start with a local site and we move to the network. So let us welcome our 3 new writing project sites: the Leatherstocking Writing Project at SUNY Oneonta, the Route 66 Writing Project at West Texas A&M, Kansas, Texas, in the room, clearly. The Piedmont Voices Writing Project, co-hosted by the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and Alamance Community College. Welcome them all. They bring us to our network of 180 local sites. We'd also like to acknowledge our guests from our sites to our network, to all the people that we welcome in as partners and friends. We want to welcome members of our Writers' Council, Joel Ben-Izzy, who's leading a workshop in storytelling later today, Jen Bryant, who will be leading a table at lunch. We want to welcome Sam Ball, one of the producers of the film American Creed that will be showing later today, 7 o'clock, in this room. Be here. It's going to be the subject of this year's massive youth publishing site, and it is a film that takes up some of the very most important issues we're talking about this year, and will absolutely feel resonant with the themes of our plenary. We also want to, in that theme, welcome our LRNG innovators. Many of them are inside the network, but also some are from outside the network, and we welcome you into the family. We love all the LRNG innovators and all their projects, but this year I particularly want to acknowledge that there are 8 teachers here from Charlottesville, Virginia, whose project had been starting last year to work with young people about the Confederate monuments. And so welcome them for some of that most relevant and important work. Okay, so, but the other thing is, like, all of LRNG is Twitter famous, so we threw this in. A few days ago, you probably know, as you've been following LRNG, that our partner in that is John Legend. And he posted some blogs and he tweeted out some videos of LRNG teachers. Look who retweeted us. Now, are we the coolest? Trevor Noah, Kim Kardashian, Russell Simmons? I mean, so seriously, writing project, like, how cool are we? Seriously, any of you who might otherwise get Kim Kardashian to tweet you out, I want to meet you, I want to know. But I just want to say, that is way cool. And we also want to take a moment to remember that there are some folks who might have been here and circumstances again of this school year have made it challenging for them. So let's remember our colleagues in Houston, South Florida, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and Northern California. Some of those places have just made it both impossible for people to come here, but also taught us that schools are a central part of the infrastructure in any community. And those people are getting their schools up and they're having safe places for kids to come and learn and anchoring their communities. So thank you to all of them. We always want to acknowledge our board of directors, many of whom are sitting up front here. They are all eager to meet and talk to you, and we especially want to welcome this year that we have 5 new members of the board of directors. There you'll see them. If you can find one, a board of director member in the wild, please introduce yourself. Talk about your work. They're eager to meet you. And then finally, we want to acknowledge 2 other folks. So the people from Writable who are helping us sponsor the meeting, thank you. They have a table out there, visit with them. They have a workshop tomorrow. And then we also want to acknowledge up front here David Field of the Board of Directors of TOLI, the Olga Lengyel Institute. And some of you have had a chance to meet David as he's visited the Writing Project annual meeting before. But in particular, we want to acknowledge his work, and all the directors of the TOLI Institute really are part of the story that you're going to hear in the plenary today. So thank you. Okay. Let's move to our plenary. Let's get to the substance of this work here, our plenary speakers. We are going to hear from a group of teachers that are going to tell us a very, very powerful why. They're going to help us explore that question. It's also a story of a slightly different what, and we'll come back to that after we hear from them. It's a story of our principles as a writing project at work in different contexts and in different ways and with new partners. But it is very deeply also a writing project story. And so I'm going to invite you all, as you hear this plenary, to think about what this plenary teaches us about our purpose and how we can work in the years ahead. We're going to start with Sondra Perl, who many of you know as a foundational scholar in composition and rhetoric and one of the co-founders of the New York City Writing Project. She and her colleague Jennifer Lemberg are going to tell us the story of TOLI and introduce the panel. Welcome them.
Thank you, Elyse. Good morning, everyone. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here to address Writing Project people from all over the country and our associated partners. I'm here to describe the work of the Holocaust Educators Network and our parent organization, the Olga Lengyel Institute. As Elyse said, we have a deep and time-honored connection with the National Writing Project. And I'd like to open by explaining how our partnership came about. First, I have a rhetorical question. Do you know the experience of meeting someone and at that meeting having your life change? For me, this kind of meeting has happened twice in my life. The first time occurred literally 40 years ago, in 1977, at the Conference on College Composition, also known as the 4 Cs. It was in Denver. I was delivering a paper on the results of my doctoral research on the composing processes of basic writers. And unbeknownst to me, Jim Gray, the founder of what was then called the Bay Area Writing Project, was in the audience. When the session ended, Jim, with his twinkling eyes and boundless energy, bounded over to me and said, "I'm looking for some people to start a writing project in New York City. Are you game?" I was surprised, flattered, and intrigued, and told Jim that I was currently working with 2 other colleagues from CUNY, Richard Sterling and John Brereton, on a project around writing, and I asked if it would be possible for the 3 of us to consider Jim's opportunity and offer. In some ways, you could say the rest is history. Richard, John, and I met with Jim. He explained what he expected of site directors, and I have to say, we were a little skeptical. You know, teachers should write, yes, but writing groups? Seriously, in New York? You know, share your writing? You know, and we really, this is 1978, we said, you know, that sounds so California hot tub. And we said, well, I don't know if we want to do that. And Jim looked at us and he said, if you want to be a writing project director, you will. So, and from that, literally, and so he told us, we agreed, and the New York City Writing Project was born, holding its first summer institute also in 1978. And from that moment on, literally, my teaching practice and my professional life have never been the same. I came to understand what it means to encourage and support all student voices in my classroom. I came to understand and truly value the power of sharing writing in small response groups. I came to understand the way writing classrooms are an example of democracy in action, where everyone's writing and everyone's voice count. And I came to develop a profound respect for teachers working in schools under all sorts of very challenging and difficult situations. Over the years, the Writing Project became the place where I met like-minded colleagues and made lifelong friends, the place from which I drew sustenance, and the place that to this day I think of as my professional home. Fast forward now 28 years to 2005, and another meeting, this time a breakfast meeting across from Grand Central Station in Manhattan with the board, actually 2 members of the board of TOLI, one of them being David. They were looking for someone to create a professional development program for teachers of the Holocaust. My personal journey as a Holocaust educator had begun in 1996 when I was invited to work in Innsbruck with Austrian teachers of English. This trip brought me face to face with the roots of prejudice in my own life, and after much soul-searching and many years of writing, led me in 2005 to publish a teaching memoir called On Austrian Soil, Teaching Those I Was Taught to Hate. Having read my book, the TOLI board offered me an amazing opportunity to use what I knew as a writing teacher to create a summer institute on teaching about the Holocaust, and also using the Holocaust as a lens for thinking about the abuse of human rights today. In 2006, I created the Holocaust Educators Network, modeled on the principles and practices of the National Writing Project. And at that point, I asked Elyse if the National Writing Project would partner with us in reaching out to writing teachers who also see themselves as advocates for social justice. Again, you could say the rest is history. Our program, which is a marriage between writing project pedagogy and profoundly difficult content, is now entering its 13th year, and every summer, about half of our participants come from writing project sites across the country. The 3 teachers speaking this morning attended our summer seminar in 3 different years and have brought the work back home to their classrooms and communities, where they teach about genocide, honor survivors, and move into the present to address local issues of social injustice, all the while using writing, art, and performance to give voice to their students' learning, passions, histories, and talents. Before we turn the morning over to them, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Jennifer Lemberg, who will explain more about TOLI, our umbrella organization, and tell you a bit more about each teacher. And again, not only thank you to Elyse for inviting us in the writing project, to supporting us to be here and our teachers, but thank you all for doing the what and the why so brilliantly. Thank you.
Great. It's really exciting to be here. My own experience with TOLI began when I participated in that very first summer seminar in 2006, during which Sondra asked if I would be interested in helping her to grow a new program she was developing. So one of those life-changing moments. What I thought would be a little side gig while I finished graduate school soon became the focus of my professional life, and I'm grateful to have found a way to bring together my interest in Holocaust and social justice education with my equally strong commitment to the teaching of writing. Sondra spoke eloquently about the importance of NWP to TOLI's history. Another important part of our story is a legacy bequeathed to us by Olga Lengyel, a Holocaust survivor and author of 5 Chimneys, A Woman's True Story of Auschwitz, a memoir that helped to inspire William Styron's well-known novel, Sophie's Choice. Olga's post-war journey took her from Paris to New York City, where she purchased a townhouse on Manhattan's Upper East Side, and we now hold our summer seminars in her former home, around what is, literally, Olga's table. Despite having lost her entire family at Auschwitz, Olga maintained her faith in humanity and believed in the power of education to guard against injustice. TOLI is founded on that vision, which makes a critical link between the past and the present, as we hope you can begin to see articulated in this brief animation. While the graphic helps to communicate our mission, the best representatives of our program are, of course, the teachers in our network. For that reason, I'm excited to introduce 3 teacher consultants who are carrying Olga's legacy forward in thoughtful and innovative ways. In classrooms that span nearly the entire United States, these teachers help students to learn about the Holocaust while encouraging them to take action in the present. And in their very different approaches to this subject, they honor the specific needs of their students and their communities. First, we will hear from Brenda Johnston of the Montana Writing Project, who attended the summer seminar in New York City in 2009. An enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe, Brenda teaches at Browning High School and is the recipient of Montana's statewide Advocacy Award for Excellence in Indian Education for All. She is also a co-leader of our satellite seminar in Montana. Following Brenda will be Tracei Willis of the Mississippi Writing Thinking Institute. Tracei will participate in our Olga Lengyel International Scholar Teacher Program in Austria this spring, and she's making tentative plans for a satellite seminar in Mississippi. She joined us in New York in 2016. And our final speaker will be Michelle Clark of the San Marcos Writing Project, a member of the 2013 Summer Seminar cohort. In addition to her work with TOLI, Michelle is a graduate of the USC Shoah Master Teacher Program. She's an experienced classroom teacher, and she is now serving as co-director of the Share Your Learning campaign, and she is a co-leader of the soon-to-be-launched TOLI Satellite Seminar in San Diego. So with very deep and shared gratitude to everyone here at NWP, I now turn things over to Brenda.
Good morning. I would like to thank the National Writing Project and TOLI for inviting me here this morning, and I am deeply honored and humbled. I am a teacher on the Blackfeet Reservation in north central Montana. Our reservation flanks Glacier National Park on the western boundary and Canada to the north. I have 25 years of experience in teaching Native children, in addition to teaching at a small rural school in southern Montana. As I was pondering what I might have to say to you, I began reflecting on my educational experience. And as I look back, I could count on one hand the teachers I had that were a reflection of me. Mr. DeRozier and Mr. McKay were possibly the only Native teachers I had as I was growing up, even though I was attending a school where the student body was 90% Native American. Our curriculum consisted of European history, American history, British and American literature, mathematics, and science. It was not until I attended university that I would encounter coursework that pertained to my own history and culture. And it would be many years before I would fully understand the impact that this had on my self-image. I internalized this experience to mean that white students would always be smarter, white students would always be better, and white students would always succeed. It was not until I was well into my 30s that I began to shed this image and realized that my worth did not depend on the images that I had grown up with as a child. It was not until I completed my first writing project seminar that I became fully committed to seeing that curriculum provided my students with opportunities to learn about their history and their culture. It was not until I became involved with TOLI and the Holocaust Educators Network that I became a stronger voice for my people. So what did I not learn while I was a student in public school? I did not learn that our government from 1800 until 1895, on 10 different occasions, seized chunks of our Blackfeet lands that once stretched from the North Saskatchewan River to the Yellowstone River in the south. I did not learn that in 1870, troops from the U.S. Cavalry, led by Colonel Eugene Baker, attacked a Blackfeet camp in the dead of winter, killing 170 people, mostly women and children, their intent to exterminate. I did not learn that in 1883, in what is now known as the starvation winter, 20% of my ancestors starved to death, the buffalo herds having been decimated. I did not learn that the American sentiment towards Native Americans was shaped by propaganda, both in words and in artistic mediums. I did not learn that revered American leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Teddy Roosevelt helped propagate the hatred of Native people. And I did not learn that Abraham Lincoln, a figure I always admired, ordered the public hanging of 38 Dakota men on December 26, 1862, in Mankato, Minnesota. Through my affiliation with TOLI, I have made a personal commitment to teach the Holocaust. My students read night, listen to survivor testimony, learn about Jewish life before and after the Holocaust, and 1 year participated in a webinar through the George Bush Presidential Library, learning about German internment camps in our country. The highlight of this teaching was the year my students raised money to bring a Holocaust survivor to our school. In Blackfeet tradition, she was presented an Indian name and given a Pendleton blanket. After studying the Holocaust, my students turned the lens toward our own history, studying the Baker Massacre. They read a historical account of this event, study primary and secondary source materials, analyzing the information they are learning. They also learn the definition of genocide and search for evidence as they are examining documents. This quest requires they study the massacre of the Blackfeet from multiple perspectives and form their own ideas on how and why it happened, and what can we learn from these two episodes in human history. The final project is to create multi-genre pieces, synthesizing what they have learned from their study of the Holocaust and the Baker Massacre. On behalf of my students, I am proud to share 3 samples of their work. A culmination of this unit, these are poems that speak in 2 voices. The first video speaks in the voices of the leaders, Colonel Baker and Hitler. The second video is from the perpetrator's perspective, one a Nazi, the other a US soldier. And the last one speaks in the voices of teenagers, one Jewish and one Blackfeet.
I'm a drunk white man.
I'm an angry German.
I have a hate for natives.
I have a hate for Jews.
I have soldiers.
I have an army.
We will kill your tribe.
We will kill your race.
The sound of a scream.
With the wave of a fist.
Strike them hard.
Kill them all.
Little by little.
Thousands and thousands.
I'll take your family.
I'll take you away from your family.
Elders are beat.
Children are starved.
Bullets are fired.
People are burned.
Respect is lost.
Pride is taken.
Anger increases.
Hope decreases.
I have no sympathy.
I give no mercy.
I've murdered the Blackfeet.
I've exterminated the Jews.
I am Baker.
I am Hitler.
And
I have changed history.
We were led by Baker.
We were led by Hitler.
We killed natives.
We killed Jews.
We killed them by the hundreds.
We killed them by the thousands.
We took their land.
We took their home.
We took their buffalo.
We took their businesses.
We destroyed their medicine bundles.
We burned their synagogues.
We gave them European names.
We gave them numbers.
We cut their braids.
We shaved their heads.
We attacked during the night.
We attacked during the day.
We know them as savages.
We know them as a filthy race.
We surrounded them.
We trapped them.
We changed innocent lives forever.
It was November 1938.
It was January 1870.
There was broken glass everywhere.
The landscape was covered with snow.
It sparkled like Mama's diamond earring.
It sparkled like the stars in the sky.
I awoke from the pounding on the door.
I awoke from the blast of gunshots.
We were hustled in a cattle cart.
We were chased by the men in blue.
Father was taken earlier that week. He couldn't defend us.
Father was hunting. He couldn't protect us.
There was nowhere to hide.
I ran and crouched in the bushes.
We arrived at a strange place, surrounded by barbed wire fences.
I huddled in the bushes, listening to the screams and gunshots.
We were forced to dig deep holes in the earth.
I laid there, waiting for help.
The soldiers arrived with guns pointed in our faces.
The men in blue surrounded us with guns pointed in our faces.
I heard a loud explosion, and I was laying on the ground next to the others.
I heard a loud eruption, and I was laying on the ground alone.
Why would they do this?
We haven't done anything wrong.
Maybe there's someone out there that feels our pain.
Is there someone out there that knows our pain?
Are there others out there experiencing our pain?
We are one.
In closing, it is my hope that one day all students in our schools across our country will study the Holocaust and the history of Native peoples. I could not be prouder of my home state for making Indian education for all, the study of Native history and culture, a law for all schools in our state. Thank you.
Maya Angelou said, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." We all come into this world human. We are born into the human family assigned to one group or another, taught to walk, feed ourselves, dress ourselves, think at first like our parents, and then for ourselves. We come face to face with our differences. We are taught to look upon the differences of others in a certain way. Some of us are taught acceptance, others an obscure sense of tolerance, while others are taught to hate, to distrust the difference, not realizing we really are more alike than we are unalike. Not realizing if we can be taught to hate, we can also be taught to love. Taught to help, not to harm. Taught to lift up, not tear down. The human family, we are a flawed lot. Broken, yet beautiful, spiteful and vindictive, yet remarkably helpful and supportive. We are flawed, cracked, jagged, twisted, ugly, sinful, imperfect. Perfectly imperfect. We are family. I come from a large, extremely flawed, loving family. My dad's parents had 14 children between 1939 and 1963. There were 7 boys, 7 girls, 4 sets of twins, and they all survived childhood in Birmingham, Alabama, during the height of both the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights Movement. My maternal grandmother had 7 girls spanning the same time period in Selma, Alabama. My parents became masters of keeping their heads down, staying in their figurative places, and bearing the unbearable weight of racial status quo. My parents wanted better for me, but they equated better with safe, with not speaking out, with keeping me sheltered, unexposed to the world around me. But at an early age, I lost myself in the portals of my school library, letting award-winning writers lead me to find my voice as I scribbled my hopes and fears into cheap spiral notebooks. Inside my journal, my voice could be as loud as I wanted it to be. No one could shush me. Over the past 13 years, I've had many classroom families, some more functional than others. And as a teacher, I am now the leading writer in the room. It falls to me to guide my students, to find their voices, to know that their voices matter, and that they're worthy of being respected, shared, and truly heard. But I met my kindred family the summer of 2016 at the Olga Lengyel Institute. Our shared desire to learn more about the Holocaust brought us together, but our writing, that's what made us family. We saw each other through our shared words. We saw one another's scars and fragile flaws. We saw and accepted one another from all walks of life, fitting every stereotype. As different as we were, we became family. In our study of Judaism, we learned the concept of tikkun olam, which means repair the world. And as a cohort, we decided to post tikkun olam on our classroom walls as a reminder to go forward, repairing the world. 26 sisters and brothers left Olga's table connected by a concept. And I walked into the 2016-2017 school year with a renewed sense of family. My TOLI family's spirit pumped through me and into my classroom family. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could help my students to repair the world. But first, I would need them to see outside their own personal bubbles, outside their boxes. Before seeing the world, they truly needed to see themselves. They would need to identify their own beliefs and biases before they could even attempt to understand anyone else's point of view.
I believe in standing up for what's right, even when you have no one to back you up. I believe in heartbreak and how hopeless it can make you feel. I believe in peace and controversy, faith, love, hope, and chaos, living and learning, trying and failing. I believe in myself. Casey Black.
I believe in a lot of things. I believe in God and doing right for the world. I believe in acting like a lady and that a little dirt won't hurt. I believe in being selfless and yet treating yourself. I believe that being kind is key. I believe in a better future. I believe that we are the future. Flora Spina.
Just because I'm Muslim doesn't mean I'm a terrorist and doesn't mean I wear the hijab. And doesn't mean I don't respect other people's religion. Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I'm weak, doesn't mean I'm sassy, and doesn't mean I can't do what guys can do. Maha Abu Salah.
Just because I'm Hispanic doesn't mean I'm an immigrant. Doesn't mean I can't speak English, and it doesn't mean I fear Donald Trump. Just because I'm 14 doesn't mean I'm young and dumb. Doesn't mean I don't understand economics, and doesn't mean I binge watch Netflix. Why is my race so important to how you see me? Why do females always have to be seen as weak and dependents? Why do 14-year-olds have to be seen as immature and unreasonable thinkers? Flora Spina.
Just because I'm from a small town in Mississippi doesn't mean I can't go to an Ivy League college. Doesn't mean I'm kin to everyone, and it doesn't mean I can't cook food that isn't fried. Katie Lucas.
My students began to see the humanity in one another. They shared their writing, shared their religions, shared their cultures, their family quirks, and their own personal hopes and fears. And they did so with compassion. They supported one another, wiped one another's tears, and even took over reading for one another when the sharing became too difficult. One of my students joked that we were like Hamilton, writing like we were running out of time. Shurman Elyse asked, "Why do poets think they can change the world?" My students would tell him, "Sir, because we can." We formed a coalition with my TOLI sister, Michelle Best, a teacher in Ohio, where my Mississippi students would exchange their writing with students from up north. Mrs. Best's students assumed my students would be racist because, Mississippi. Meanwhile, my Mississippi students thought that Miss Beth's students would think they were all dumb because, you know, Mississippi. But through the power of the written word, misconceptions were addressed, barriers were broken, and bonds were formed. Writing to repair the world, it's a mission we take seriously. This year, 2 more TOLI sisters are joining our writing exchange, and my Mississippi students will exchange writing with students in Ohio, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, in an effort to show that we really are more alike, my friends, than unalike. Our collective voices grow stronger. We continue to rise up. We will not throw away our shot. Tikkun Olam, y'all.
In education, we often hear about authentic learning, authentic assessment, and even authentic audience. But what we rarely hear about is creating the space for students to engage in authentic action. And we know that to responsibly teach history means that we're going to expose students to the brutality of colonization, Native American genocide, slavery, entrenched misogyny, the eugenics movement, the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, segregation, gentrification, police brutality, and war after war after war. And our students, though appreciative of the truth, can become disempowered because there is nothing that they can do to control or change what's past. But we don't want to leave them in that helpless state, which can quickly subside into desensitization or apathy. So we do what we can as educators to give them the space to respond, particularly when addressing the Holocaust. And I've tried to do that through art, allowing students to express their learning visually, through tribute, having students read Holocaust memoirs and sketching their portraits to honor the survivors, and of course through writing, whether it's through truth narratives, in-the-moment reflections, poetry. We all know the therapeutic and cathartic release that writing can give. And this did a lot to address individual response, but it really wasn't doing much to address that real-time need for community response. So I knew if I wanted my students to think critically about the world around them and act empathetically, I needed to create space for them to exercise their agency in service of others. So I designed the Responsibility, Empathy, and Action project, and it was grounded in survivor testimony. We watched a clip of Frank Shurman. He was a survivor who grew up in Hildesheim, Germany, and he was forcibly removed from his home with his family, and along with 75 of his neighbors, the Nazi soldiers forced them to march around their burning synagogue. The soldiers rolled out the Torah and forced them to march across it. It was extremely humiliating. He eventually ends up at Buchenwald, and he's nearly beaten to death by a guard because he was sticking up for another inmate. Through a series of fortunate events, he immigrates to the United States, only to face a host of new issues as a refugee in a new country. There was a lot of pain in his testimony that he talks about, but he was very humorous. And there's a moment where he talks about living in Alcott, Indiana, and I'm sorry for anyone who lives there, but I didn't say it. Frank Shurman said this. So he's in Alcott, Indiana, and he hates it there. He hates the work, he hates the weather, and there's a part where he says, "I survived Buchenwald for this." So after my students watched Frank's testimony, they started to watch more and more survivor testimony to learn about their experiences before and during the war, but they were really focusing on what happened when they immigrated to the United States. How did they survive? How did they find work? And this part of the project, having them learn from Holocaust survivors about their experience, really prepared them for the next phase of the project, where they would be interviewing high school-age refugees living in San Diego County. I contacted the director of the Peacemakers program from the International Rescue Committee, and we brought my 11th grade students together with the high school-age refugee students that she worked with to co-create an exhibition. The Peacemakers came to our school. My students interviewed them about their countries of origin, why they were forced to flee, how they were treated when they were here. They took their photographs, and painted their portraits in art class, they also painted abstract pieces that were inspired by a moment of hope that they heard the peacemaker talk about during their interview. And this all culminated in an Empathy in Action Arts and Poetry Festival. And with generous help with funding from TOLI, we were able to have this festival in an amazing way. I contacted an owner of a gallery in San Diego. He loved the idea of the project, said we could use the gallery for free. So the students worked hard to curate all of the art in the gallery. They designated space for the stage. They organized the silent auction. They created an area for parents to engage with students as they talked about what they learned from their refugee memoirs. And after the silent auction, that's when the performances began. My students performed spoken word poetry that was based on the lives of the peacemakers. And the peacemakers shared their powerful testimonies with the audience. It was one of those nights where there was laughing, there was crying, and you could feel yourself literally wrapped up in a blanket of humanity. That's the best way I can describe it. It just felt so good to be there. And at the end, all the proceeds that we raised during this Arts and Poetry Festival went directly back to the Peacemakers program for their scholarships. And every single student reflection talked about how meaningful this project was for them. And I just want to share one of those student reflections with you. I feel like refugees are a group of people largely ignored by the bulk of citizens. In the United States, everything is so fast-moving and people rarely stop and get to know the people surrounding them. Before this project, I really wasn't aware that there are refugees living in San Diego. I always assumed that San Diego is full of middle-class people, not refugees from war-torn countries. This project has definitely given me a better sense of the type of people who live right here in San Diego. It also gave me an idea about what some of these refugees had to go through before arriving in the United States. I took away a much broader understanding of the lives of refugees. During the exhibition, I told my dad that I really wanted to purchase one of the paintings of the refugee I interviewed, Mio, and give it to him as a gift. I interviewed Mio and give it to him as a gift. Although it wasn't my painting, I really wanted to feel that warm, fuzzy feeling when you give a gift to someone. I've given tons of gifts in my life, but none felt as good as giving that painting to Mio. He was so happy to get something that truly connected to him. He said something like, "I've never had anything like this for myself before." This truly put into perspective the impact someone can have on a refugee's life, or anyone's life for that matter. I really learned a true sense of what it means to give, and I think that is more valuable than any factual knowledge out there. So when we create the space for students to engage in authentic action, it does take a lot of time to do that justice, but the result is that we have students who not only know about others, they care about others. And we have people who think critically and act empathetically. Now, we all know that when we engage in social justice work, we are making the world a better place. We are also probably making at least one parent angry because they don't agree with the social justice work that we're doing. I wrote a poem for that parent, and I'd like to share it with you. Dear intolerant parent, in your email full of insults, you asked me, can I stop teaching my social justice agenda? Can I stop teaching my social justice agenda? I'll do that just as soon as you can begin to comprehend the urgency of our current educational situation. The 1950s has become envious of the strides we've made when it comes to school segregation. Whether you believe we live in a great nation or one that needs to be made great again, the entire political spectrum needs to pay attention. Securing civil and human rights for others does not somehow magically take away yours. And dismantling systems of privilege is simply unlocking divisive doors. So I'll stop. I'll stop when race and class are no longer the most powerful predictors of academic success, when policymakers transform the tyranny of tracking and a child's intellectual capacity is measured by authentic assessments instead of tests. I'll stop when school leaders reject hegemonic instruction and discipline policies that destruct by investing in the courageous coaching of colleagues to embrace culturally responsive teaching and restorative practices that are just. When all classrooms become a space for whole child development and trust, and when the world stops pointing out the thems and realizes there's only us. I'll stop when my undocumented students aren't living in fear of being reported, when time takes away the memory of holding my weeping ninth grader after her father was deported. When precious young girls like your daughter don't hide parts of their identity from their father, she's just trying to figure out who she is, crying out for acceptance. It could have been you, not me, that she confided in, if you could just open your heart to difference. You see, what you call brainwashing, I call critical thinking, evidence excavation, perspective taking, fact finding, fake news filtration, historical analysis with real world application. Inviting students to care about the lived experiences of others is not an agenda, it's a mission. And people like you are working overtime like the hate you give earns commission. Still, I take solace in knowing that I am not alone in this struggle, this battle, this fight. There are people in this world, in this room, who make daily decisions to teach and live what's right. I fear my letter is falling on a hardened heart. You can choose to hear my truth, yet you don't. To answer your question, I can stop teaching my social justice agenda, but as God is my witness, I won't, and neither should you. Thank you. Thank you.
Before they go down, give them even some more love. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're moving within and toward your purpose. So thank you, Holocaust Educators Network and TOLI. You have enriched us so much. Thank you so much. So here we are, a very traditional plenary. Not a plenary that we planned because of our funding news. The plenary that we knew last year we wanted to do. TOLI was having a first big conference. We said, what a great time to have you present. In Charlottesville, they were looking at the problem of Confederate monuments, not because there were marches, but because that was good and important work to do. The work we do typically, traditionally, the way we support each other, the family we have together to give us strength to do the important work. That's just our work. That's all, our normal work. So that's why we wanted to do a traditional plenary before we knew white nationalists would march on Charlottesville twice, before we knew hate crimes would go up 11% last year, before we knew the voices of so many of you and other teachers talking about the challenge and the struggles in order to build a great society and good communities through education. Teachers, I think, and writing project teachers in particular, I've been thinking of us as first responders. When something is happening in society, we are the ones who run toward it, not the ones that run away. That's part of our why. And I think for writing teachers, that is always a start, because as writing teachers, what we have to run toward is in front of us every day in the words and thoughts and voices of our young people. It is the most important work that we do. So before we knew all this, and before we knew about our seed funding, we knew that. And I would say one other thing then, as we said, wow, the Holocaust educators are going to teach us some powerful lessons about our why, but they'll also teach us something about our what. Because none of that work that was presented was funded through our federal grant, by the way. None of it. Now, it certainly was a matter of writing project principles in action, as you heard Sondra explain. What we value about writing and identity and community built around writing. It also leveraged the network in powerful ways, the satellites that were described, the opportunity to bring together and find teachers from everywhere, from Mississippi, from San Diego, from Montana, That was built on the network of trusting and close relationships that we built together. So we invested a tremendous amount of intellectual and social capital. But it wasn't about the money, because it really hasn't ever been about the money. It's really always been about the work. So with that in mind, just to answer some of your what questions. First off, we would say that the genesis of great educators drawing on writing project insights is work that can happen in lots of different ways. And the value of our social relationships together can be maintained regardless. We are committed to doing that. In fact, for those of you in the national office, I don't want to say it's never about the money. For those of us in the national office, we're quite proud to show you a figure. Since 1991, your national office has raised over $143 million to invest in your work. Isn't that amazing? I mean, really, like for a bunch of teachers, I'm serious, right? Don't take away your $250 deduction for your school supplies and help us get these dollars to invest in your work. We're going to keep doing that. We want to keep doing that, of course. And we're tremendously proud of that. But we're actually really much more proud of what we've created together over the 44 years of this network. So to answer your whats, the what questions you've been writing on email and asking us in the hallways, et cetera. One, yes, your small but mighty national office is going to get smaller over the next year. So many of you have asked that. We're going to say it. Yes, it's true. We will be shrinking our numbers. But we're doing that out of an incredible sense of commitment together as a team in the national office, because our commitment is, one, to continue to support the work, for example, of the I3 and other work that is currently ongoing, number one. And number two, to make sure that we're good stewards of your intellectual legacy. So no, we are not closing up shop by any means. We will still be there. You still be there. We will still be here. You have to still be there. And two, yes, it is true. This is the last annual meeting of this type for the foreseeable future. But we're pleased to say, and very grateful to say, that NCTE is working with us to ensure that we have a home within the regular NCTE conference, a strand of sessions, and a meal or a place to meet. Yeah, so come to Houston next year. Plan to come to Houston. We will be within NCTE, and thank them very much for this. I'd also say that this notion, this transition, we would know is coming. We read the news. We see what's happening. And we've been preparing for it. And in fact, over the last 2 years, supported by the Gates Foundation, a set of writing project sites and writing project leaders have been working together to make it possible for us to have a whole set of different whats to address our why. These are the folks in the Building New Pathways project. Quite a few sites involved in different ways. And they've been creating, one, models for new pathways to leadership at sites. Powerful, strong alternatives that reach teachers for whom the traditional summer institute may not be the best choice. So they've been working on that. New tools to recognize and credential leaders in different ways that break apart and look at the question of what are the practices that we think are important and how can we actually make sure those practices are available to teachers in all different patterns. And they've been creating a new resource, a new blog, in order to put kind of leadership development resources right at the fingertips of new teacher consultants and senior teacher consultants as well, so that they can take up action in their schools and communities without having to feel as if they have to be authorized in a way. The tools are right there. They've been debuting much of that here in a thread at this program. This will also be the topic of our Friday convening after the spring meeting in Washington, D.C. So yes, we are having a spring meeting. That's also been one of your questions. And yes, we will have that amazing conference afterwards where all these sites and teacher consultants will work you through what they've developed. So the thing is, when we know our why, we have options for our what. Now, some other things to say. There are some things that you all can do to participate in the project of keeping us together and moving us forward. We're going to send you some things after the annual meeting. We will mail everybody some things, some suggestions about what you can do as we go through the transition that's ahead of us immediately after the meeting. A kind of summary of some easy sites, some ideas. For example, you can be connected to that Write, Learn, Lead blog, which is that little resource base that people have put together. It's also on the back of the t-shirts today. If you were wondering, what's that about? It's about that blog. You can join a Yammer group. Yammer is like a private Facebook group. We'll send you ways to get connected to that where we can keep having conversations. And by the way, you can buy the stuff. All y'all buying the stuff, go buy the stuff. All the stuff out there, we want you to buy the stuff. That helps, by the way, when you buy the stuff. All of that helps, seriously. Now, I don't know if that'll win the day. I mean, you know, like they say on the internet meme, America, girl, you in big trouble. You seen that? Because like really, seriously, this is true. We may be the first responders, but we're gonna have to work together if we're gonna try to win the day. And it's hard to know now what's really all ahead of us. But the future of your site is in your hands. What happens to us at the national office does not determine what happens to you. So number one, look after your local site. The future of the network is in your hands. You communicate with each other. You reach out and form relationships. You do all of that. Let's keep doing that. That's the substance of our relationships with each other. You do all those things. Walk toward your purpose. We will all walk toward our purpose. And we will get through. Now, you know we're about to be 44 years old, so I just want to introduce one final thought. The network's about to be 44 years old. Now that's like really a big deal. How many things in education are 44 years old? I don't mean individual teachers, some of you are. But seriously, how many things in education? It's amazing how far we've come from one summer institute at the University of California, Berkeley, with 20 teachers. And look at us now. I think this is a story that educational historians will want to tell, will have to tell, when teachers themselves developed this thing. Think of all we've done. We inaugurated in those 44 years a whole new area of research and scholarship. You couldn't, back in the day, get a PhD in the teaching of writing. That would have been like laughable in the 70s. And now it's everywhere, the scholarship and the development of knowledge. We made the notion of teachers teaching teachers routine. Now, like, it's a yawner because no one doesn't believe it. But at the beginning, no one thought it was possible. We have done all of that. We've created amazing curriculum and proof points and demonstrations for what young people can do, given the supportive and welcoming context that we create in our classroom. All kinds of young people. For every category of young person, when someone says, I'm not sure they can, we can point to a classroom and a young person who says, of course they can, look. It's the proof is before your eyes. We've done all of that. There's a whole new generation of educators out there. There are educators who have only taught in K-12 schools that have been marked by NCLB, where writing was pushed out of the curriculum, where they look around and they have never in their professional lives seen the kinds of teaching that perhaps for you is fairly routine, that you might be thinking everybody does and did. We have to be able to pull this together to give to that next generation of teachers so that they can, in fact, do that for their young people, what you saw here. So we don't want the educational historians to stop at 44 years. The other thing is, like, that's like a really stupid number. So I want to turn more away from, yeah, all the inspirational stuff, but like seriously, as rhetoricians, like it doesn't roll, like, oh yes, the 44-year-old, yeah, no. You try to make a logo out of it, you've got the 2 4s as a 4, it's not gonna work. So here's my pitch to you, my final pitch. I think that we should have an ambition that we can get to 50. Do you think we can get to 50? Golden anniversary. Think of all the anniversary cards we could send each other at the 50-year party. Then the historians can say, in their first half century. Isn't that better? So close. 6 years. Okay, so here's the thing. So I've been thinking about this 50 thing. And then I started to think about, well, we could get there if we could do, 50 for 50. What about 50 for 50? What if we sort of made a commitment of 50 for 50? Again, with whatever what. Like between now and 2024, which is when we would be 50, could each site make sure that you try to get 50 new leaders to join your site? That seems doable. What about something like 50 resources accumulated from your site for the Write, Learn, Lead blog? Or 50 people you sign up for Yammer, or 50 people that you might get to sign up for the Right Now newsletter? What if we just thought that we would try to do 50 for 50 and let that be our goal, whatever seems the right 50 to do? Of course, and I won't deny it could also be like $50 in the annual campaign. So I just want to say, when you're thinking 50 for 50, it's not like that we won't take money, but it's not about the money. But if you could send the money, we would not be about the money. It is not about the money. Well, anyway. 2024 is going to be another presidential election. And now, it feels like we're always in a presidential election, doesn't it? But that's going to be an official year. And so how great it would be to get there, to see, in fact, where the next 6 years take us. What people will be thinking about education and about young people and about their local schools and about higher education. We may better know what our what's should be for the second half century by that time. But the first thing we have to do is make sure that we can give over this incredible foundation of knowledge and practice and love and relationships to that second half century. So I'm going to invite you, and maybe to think about this in your writing, because in our traditional plenary we end with writing, to think about the question of 50 for 50. And can we do that? And what could we do to get there? Now, we're going to turn to that writing in just a second, but one little bit off script. Because this will be, for the foreseeable future, our last big plenary and our last meeting of this type, and I wouldn't want to end without you having a chance that I think you really want, which is to thank and acknowledge the amazing national staff that has been bringing you this meeting for decades. Would you join me in that? They are outstanding. Staff, this is for you. You awesome people, how it goes on. I'm sure they appreciate that. They believe in the mission too, and they say all the time that it is their honor to serve this network, so thank you for that. Okay, so the question that we would love for you to take a few minutes for your closing writing, you will, of course, as you always do, write about whatever you want, or pretend to be writing. Whatever, sitting quietly, seeming to write. The question is, in effect, we know our why. Our whats can change, but only if we can stay together. So can we do it? How can we do it? What should we do? We would love you to pull those thoughts together, and as you'll see, you can send them to us at writing@nwp.org so that we can hear your voice in the question of moving forward to that really big golden anniversary party that I hope we're having in 2024. Thank you.